we do see some near-term concerns, and clearly clients are concerned about election and about the vaccine timing, about the virus. But looking at more of the long-term fundamentals, we're still optimistic, both on the global cyclical recovery and as well here in Asia, where you see economic outperformance. And given the amount of cash that we see on the sidelines, both across our client portfolios, but even if you look at, say, institutional investor holdings, you see quite a bit of cash. And so we do think that cash will likely come in, and these dips will be relatively short-lived. And so we
Okay.
broadly do see it as an opportunity.
Okay. And when you talk about the fact that Asia is performing better, let's say on an economic standpoint, but also with the COVID cases, it's certainly not unto itself. And you make the point that any stimulus coming out of the U.S. will have a big impact. So what are you actually watching out for here in the context of the upcoming election, too?
Yeah, I think there's two things. I think first, the presidential election, because clearly the U.S. president has control over trade and foreign policy. And so any shifts that we see in terms of trade and foreign policy that's more advantageous or more friendly to Asia will have an impact. But then when you look at the broader composition of government, including the Senate, which would play into whether or not we see stimulus, and the size of the stimulus, also a factor, just because what we saw from the last round of stimulus, it did significantly boost household consumption. And a lot of that household consumption expanded the U.S. trade deficit, and it increased and improved the export outlook for Asia. So both of those factors will play into the outlook for Asia. So it is very important, both the presidential and the Senate election.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned the Senate election, because it seems like the market momentum has been pricing in a blue wave, not just a Biden victory for the White House. Alex, do want to get in your thoughts. We had a guest earlier on from the U.S., Kirk Hartman, who told us that he expects next week the markets to see a relief rally on the back of a clear outcome in the upcoming elections. How are you preparing for trade next week? I know it's extremely short term, but we're dealing with that reality in the markets, aren't we?
Yeah, I think first, it's not unusual to see some sell-off in the lead-up. If you look back to 2016, you did see a sell-off in the lead-up. And just given how pivotal this election is, it certainly will be highly consequential. I agree that if we see a clear outcome, then you will likely see a relief rally, because you can tell in the options markets and just in conversations with clients, there is a concern that we won't see a clear outcome. So I do agree with that. And it does look increasingly so that we will see at least a quicker, it's hard to say clear, but a quicker outcome on the presidential election based on the amount of states that are beginning to count mail-in ballots and what polls it look like. But from the broader composition, we still think there could be some delays in the Senate, just how close those races are. And when you talk about a blue wave scenario as being really the important factor for markets, we're not as optimistic that we'll see a real clear outcome with regards to the Senate in addition to the presidency. So there could be some delayed timing there that could delay whether we see the timing around a relief rally.